All right, so what I'm going to talk about right now is it's kind of a slight departure from cybersecurity specifically. This is a product that we haven't officially released to the public per se, but we have customers using it. It's ICS360.Fusion. If you think about what the intent of this is, it's for moving, manipulating, and displaying data. So with Fusion, it can run on very small hardware platforms. It can run on Windows, it can run in Linux. That's supported today out of the box. We've tested it on really, really small things. So we picked the crappiest, smallest thing we could find, which was a Raspberry Pi, and we can even run it there. You wouldn't be using such a crappy small thing in any sort of production environment, but we wanted to see how tiny we could make the footprint. It's also designed to run as a server class application. So you could deploy this on a VM in the server room, and it can reach out and talk to all of your floor devices, manipulate the data, do stuff with the data, reach out to cloud services, bring it all back in, just do pretty much whatever you want to do. And if you decide that the load gets too heavy for that server because you've added the other half of the plant, spin up another instance of Fusion and they will start talking to each other and load sharing all the transactions automatically. You don't have to do anything to make that happen. It will just start happening. So it's an infinitely scalable tool. You could spin up a third instance. You could spin up, I've got a customer right now who's running it on two small Dynics Edge PCs next to each other on all his cells. And while both of them are running, it's load sharing all of the transactions back to his database. If one were to fail, the other one will just keep working. So it's inherent redundancy, right? So it makes it very, very easy. So when you talk about it, and you talk about Fusion, there's this concept of resources. And a resource can be things like SQL Server, SMTP, Azure, PLCs, UA clients, REST APIs, Twilio, MQTT. So lots of different things you can pick and choose from. If I pick my VPN, let me VPN in so I can actually play. I won't worry about it. If I pick a PLC, for example, we'll pick a PLC like Rockwell, and all my resolution is all jacked up. Give it a name, op 10, and 10. Create the resource, and if I edit op 10, I can do things like assign the stuff that I want for communications, validate the communications. You can go explore the PLC. So if it's connected to the PLC, it's going to list all the tags and all the data types and everything in the PLC here. And what you can do is go through this list and just pick the ones that you want to communicate with. So it's not going to communicate with everything in the PLC all the time. It's just going to hit or miss the ones you're after specifically. Once you do that, you can test them by reading and writing to them and playing with them. And then you hit add to schema, and it's going to put them in this schema. And now in here, you can change the name. So the actual tag will be here. You can change this name. By default, it's whatever the name of the tag was, or if it's an integer file in a SLIC or something, it's the name of the, that. But you can change the name. So you can actually abstract the PLCs, different types of PLCs. So you can have the same name for Siemens tags, the same name for Rockwell, the same name, so you don't have to use different tags everywhere else. You can build something called tag groups, which allows you to read and write entire groups of tags at one time. So instead of having to individually read and write tags, you can generate and read and write entire groups of tags in one command. Okay? I'll come back to jobs. Then you have the engine that allows you to do logic. It allows you to do stuff. So if I were to create a flow, and it's called a flow, we at Dynics love the word flow these days, one of our favorite words. And it could be like, did you get in, Josh? Were you able to connect?
No.
So they're blocking us. Not fair. Right. So I'm going to create a flow. And when I've created this flow, I can edit the flow. And I have all this stuff I can do over here. And you can filter this list. You can do stuff like, I can do a PLC read. Right? And then here's my outputs from the PLC read. You can collapse these things. You can edit the PLC read. So if I had a device listed here, like Op10's PLC, then I can hit select on the tags. I can pick the tags out of that device that I selected. So I'm only looking at the specific subset of tags that I want. And then you can do update, and it'll actually read and write it. And then I can make directional changes, and I can say, okay, well now I want to do a write. Right? And I can drag and drop it like this. Now you see when you do a write to a PLC, you have a few more options for output. This is the generic output. It means if it's successful, it's going that way, but it's not going to give you any specific details. This is a success that gives you a little more info, and then the rest of these are actually errors. And I hate these little pads because I touch all the wrong buttons at all the wrong time. But I want to do this, connect those two, and now what's going to happen is when the PLC read executes, it's going to pass the results of that execute as a table in a table. Everything we do in here is a table. We treat it like a record set. Whether we read 1 tag or 100 tags, it's going to come back as a record set of tags that we can iterate through or do anything we want with. Okay, stuff them in a database. Come over here and put, data over here. This is like data, right? Data sets, randoms, read CSVs. So there's stacks of things that you can do in here. And what's cool about it is every one of these is multi-threaded, and even more so than, if you look at it, you would think logically that the flow itself, once I start this flow, which it'll probably error out, because there's really nothing there. Once I start the flow, it's always running. If you reboot the system, it'll come up running. Every one of these actions is its own thread. So it's not the flow as a thread. It's more granular than that. So you're isolating every single action within this flow to its own thread. If you're using a cluster where you have more than one, which by the way, you can test that status down here. If you have more than one node, this lists all the different nodes of the clusters, what cluster they're a part of, and their resources and utilizations. So there's quite a bit of data that you can click on and go dig into on your cluster. Like I said, the cool thing about this is it's infinitely scalable. So it's one solution that runs on little bitty stuff, or one solution that runs on a server, and it scales out really well on a server. We use technology from Microsoft called Orleans. Okay. And our developers have actually contributed to Orleans for Microsoft. So we have very intimate knowledge of the product from Microsoft. All right. So I can create as many flows as I want. I can see the status. I can see the red error here. So I can see that one faulted. I can go over and look at some diagnostics on the flow. If I come down here, when we start a flow, it becomes a job. So here's a flow that has a little more stuff, right? The other cool thing about this product, let's say as compared to some other products we have played with in the past, is it does true parallel processing, because each of these directions coming out of that write to target PLC are actually their own threads. They will execute in parallel. So we can have we can make decisions and force a path, or we can have parallel paths based on decisions. So it gives us a lot of power, a lot of capabilities. When you start a project or you start a flow, you come over here, it becomes a job. So a running flow is a job. You can have as many jobs as you want. There can be gajillions of them. One of the features we're building now is parameterizing the flows. So you can call a flow from another flow and pass values into that flow, right? So we're parameterizing the flow. Once we do that, it becomes kind of cool to build some really neat stuff, and that's what we're working on right now. The other thing that's cool about this is it includes dashboarding. So there is the ability to visualize the data. What's cool about it is all I do is I drop this dashboard box here. So the data that comes out of my write goes to here, and I'm going to call the name of this dashboard output is called copy data stuff. So that record set I told you that everything creates, we create this record basically, multi-row column record if there's lots of data there. We're giving it a name here called copy data stuff. Now I could send it out a different dashboard down below and call it Bob or Fred. Okay. And then if I come over to dashboarding, which is not done in this version that I have, sadly. In fact, they might have turned it off completely in my version. They did. I can go into that dashboard and I can actually drop widgets on the dashboard. And then I can pick that name that I gave, whatever that dashboard output was, and it'll ingest that data from that flow. And one of the things that's really cool about it is you can do it while you're setting up the widgets and the dashboards the way you want it, it will be updating them live. If the flow is running, you can actually see the chart as you're configuring how the trending looks or how it all works. So instead of having to configure it all and say, okay, go, right? You can literally watch it changing as you're doing it. So you get to see exactly what it's going to look like when it's done. And then this is fully and completely, it's all web. So you can actually point any web browser anywhere to the dashboarding by page, and you'll actually see all of the dashboarding. So we have customers, for example, they want to put it up in the performance and just run a web browser, point it at the Fusion server at a given IP and page or host name and page. That's what it'll display. Okay. So it makes it super easy. It's completely mobile. So if I were to change this to, and I forget how to do it off the top of my head, but if I were to change this to a mobile format, it would look great on a tablet, it looks great on a phone, all of that. There is absolutely no reason Fusion can't be run in a cloud, right? Again, it's a resources thing. If you can reach your PLC from the cloud, I want to talk to you about some other problems you might have. But theoretically, there's no problem, right? Long term, we want to, again, have the ability to proxy data out if people want it, okay? So that's kind of the Fusion thing. And here's some examples. So let's do the SQL thing. So I can do connection editor where I edit my connection to SQL. If I'm a developer and I like to do it this way, I can do it this way, right? Depending on if I'm logged in and how I'm logged in. Test my connection to the database, all good. I can go explore my database. So I can expand my tables. It'll list all my tables in my database over here. I can even run some queries to see what stuff looks like right now as I build my query. Select star from Fusion data, right? And execute, right? What did I do? Select star, oh yeah, I need a from, sorry. That's really small. Right, so there's the rows that it returns. You can execute stored procedures this way. You can do all kinds of stuff this way. If you're not a query kind of writing guy, hit generate, and you can now do it via table. And since there's only one, it automatically picked it for me. And now I can go in and pick any tags that I might want. And here's all the columns of data. And now I can start saying if this, I can say if dint1 and or order by, where's. So I can literally visually build my query up in here and then save it, right? And it'll come back here like so as a built query. So I don't have to know SQL syntax to be able to write queries to do stuff. I can say select this when this equals this and that tag equals that, and where 1 is bigger than 0, and you know what I mean? Makes it kind of nice. And so when you create this schema and these queries, you can then call them from the flows. And you can execute whatever you want against the flow. And there's actually a flow that allows you to put the query straight in it if you wanted to type a query directly in the middle of the action, or the, what do we call them in there now? It's not actions, it's no, it's not nodes. Hell, I can't think of it. There's a name for it. But you can execute direct queries in that way as well. And then output the data to the dashboarding or whatever you want. As you saw earlier in the APIs, or excuse me, in the resources, there's OPC. So if I logged in and set up an OPC client, I could do the same thing. I can browse the OPC client and grab the tags I want, give them different names here because this is where they pop up over here. PLCs work the same way. You can look like I showed you a minute ago. So it's pretty handy. And with the OPC, you can do security, unsecured, whatever you want to set up. Right now, it's an OPC client only. We don't have OPC server functionality in here. primarily because nobody had asked us to be an OPC server yet. We anticipate it's coming, so it's on the roadmap, right? You can use this to write data between different types of PLCs, different types of devices. So anything you can read, you can write out to something else. All the data types are ANSI data types, so they're very base atomic data types. So, for example, a DINT32 or an INT32 is the same thing as a Rockwell DINT, right, which is a 32-bit integer. That way we cross data types across multiple PLC types and different devices with no issue. Yeah, I can't believe Chris took out my HMI stuff.
Dashboard's up there.
What?
It's the dashboard's there.
Oh, maybe I can get to it from here? Oh, he might have missed it. He did. Good call. I can't wait to have a little fun on him with that. So these are a couple of dummy dashboards that are cooked up in this version, but it gives you an idea of the kind of stuff you can do. And you can, can't edit from here apparently, but you can come in here, edit, preview, then you can preview it and blow it up. And you can edit any of these widgets by editing. Yeah, again, not in this version apparently. I wasn't even supposed to be able to get to this, I'm guessing, so nothing's gonna work and look beautiful. But like you saw that whole list of stuff we had in the flows, we have a whole list of stuff for widgets. One of the features that's in the roadmap too is giving you guys the ability to build your own library of visual and flow widgets, right? That's probably 6 months or so out. The cool thing about that is then you can hide your secret sauce. If you're building some secret sauce that you don't want the competition to know about, you can build it. If you want to do some crazy advanced math, I fully expect that we'll be able to do Fourier transforms, right? This is running on a server or a PC base. Now don't put it on a Raspberry Pi and expect it to do any. Don't expect it to be particularly performant. I mean, it might take an hour and a half to get the result from the transform, but the fact that you can run it on a beefier Dynics PC or heaven forbid it's somebody else's, or a server gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity. We actually built MQTT in here at the request of American Axle, right, when we did that. It took us 3 days to add MQTT capability to this. The product is designed to be very, very extensible, very, very easily. So that's kind of it. I wanted to just kind of give you guys an overview of Fusion. Like I said, it's not really a cybersecurity product, but it's a cool enough product, and we've got a lot of people interested in talking about it. It's not going to replace some of the products we're currently using that might do similar functionalities, right? There's still a place for that product. But this with the built-in visualization, and then a future generation of this, this is a little farther down the road, will have advanced graphics capabilities like our current ProView DS does. So you'll be able to do much more advanced graphics. It'll be a separate package that you add onto it, but this will feed data into it, right? Web services, we can feed data into this. We can use this product to pull data from REST APIs, for example. So heaven forbid, we could actually use Fusion to display things from an ICS Defender because we have a REST API in there, right? So if we put an API token in here, set up all the right certificates, it gets real magical. Any questions about Fusion? Yes?
What's the response time on data, say, between an Alred Siemens compared to the ICS Defender, from like a data read or write standpoint?
Well, the ICS Defender doesn't really read or write data. It's data flowing through at line speed on a network. Read and write times on this, I can do sub-millisecond in some cases. It's extremely fast. It's faster than anything we currently have by a large margin. The question was about data reading and writing speeds, and it's very, very fast. We've seen sub-millisecond transactions.
Do you know what licensing is going to look like? Like, is it going to be flow-based?
Yeah, so licensing is going to be based on endpoint. Is that right? Let me think about that. I got too many products to think about. Fusion. So yeah, Fusion is going to have, there's a site license option or an enterprise license option, which basically says you have as many instances of Fusion as you want and talking to as much as you want. It's not going to be tag-based. If you talk to a PLC, I don't care if there's 10,000 tags in that PLC or 50,000. Doesn't matter. So it's probably going to be based on the number of PLCs you connect to, the number of databases you connect to, things of that nature. That's the plan today. Honestly, we haven't done anything but a site license. Every place we've sold it so far has been a site license for a plant, right? It's pretty reasonable at 50 grand for a site to be able to use it, 50 grand a year, and it's everywhere you want to use it, how many times you want to use it, doing whatever you want to do with it, right? Good question.
Do you consider like a site license as a site, or is that
Physical site.
That's different than an enterprise license?
Yes. Yes.
So, did you say you have an enterprise license, or
Yeah. That's on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
The Rockwell driver, does it support SIP listener?
I didn't hear you.
Does it support the SIP listener on the Rockwell driver?
Oh, unsolicited stuff? Yes and no. It's not been released, but the functionality is in play.
What about the Siemens symbolic or PLC tags? Can you get both?
With what PLC?
Siemens.
Which Siemens?
S7.
S7-300s?
1500.
Oh, 15. Yeah, I was going to say there's no symbolic in a 300. I can't help you there. But yeah, you should be able to address it by both as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about if I need to use this for a CNC machine?
Well, depending on the CNC you want to talk to, we would probably just add the driver to it for you. Like I said, it's very quick. We can add drivers to this very, very fast.
Any plans to support AWS directly? AWS IoT code? MQTT is another option, but
Yes. So like we do Azure now, and AWS is on the list, and we'll go down the road. Azure's been the one we've been asked for. So.
the file storage, I saw some access for file reading and file writing.
Yep.
Can access any drive on the computer, or it needs to be a specific staging area?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but I can find it out. I haven't done that. I don't. Let's. So if I were to go add a resource, let's say file storage. I don't like the way these buttons work. Those are changing. Yeah, so that can't be right. But I know you can read and write CSVs, you can read and write JSON, you can read and write XML. And as far as I know, you can point it wherever you want. You're not limited to, I know what you're thinking about, being limited to a certain subfolder under a sub thing. Yeah, I don't believe that's a constraint, but I'll find out for sure. Can you take a note of that, Josh, please? Yeah. Or actually, just Teams it to maybe Chris. We'll get an answer right away. Good question. Any other questions? The question I just answered was, do the files for reading and writing have to be in a specific location, or can they be pretty much anywhere? And the answer, I believe, is they can be anywhere, but we're going to confirm that. And yes, so currently we support Azure connectivity because natively, that's what we've been asked for so far. AWS is next in line, but we can do MQTT. So in fact, I showed it to Ken a while back. I took some of the UDT data that you guys were using, he was dealing with, and I was just pushing it up into AWS for him so he could see it. Yeah. Any other questions on Fusion? Cool. Happy to talk more about it later.